You could say that Dan Shine was destined to become a journalist.
I was born into a newspaper family. My father worked at a newspaper for 45 years, rising from fetching coffee for reporters to walking out the door 45 years later as a publisher. So I spent a lot of time in newspaper offices hanging out with these weird characters, reporters and photographers. And so that was kind of my growing up. And my two older brothers went into journalism like I did. So it was a household of not a lot of great science and math being done, but we sure as hell could write and spell well. Landed in Dallas and covered all sorts of things from, crime and courts and fires and mayhem to Cowboys going to the Super Bowl, that kind of stuff. And then moved back to my hometown of Detroit and worked there for 8 years, same kind of stuff, just writing a variety of things. And then my wife was in newspapers too, so we decided we needed to diversify a little bit. And so I went into kind of the higher ed sector and did communications at a university for a while. Now I'm back.
And he's back as senior editor at Automotive News, which does a terrific job in using a multimedia approach to get the news out to its audience, whether it be in print, digital, podcasts, or video. Journalism isn't dead, according to Dan. It just has a new look.
I'm Dan Shine, senior editor at Automotive News.
If you just want to introduce yourself, your name and your title.
Okay. I'm Dan Shine, senior editor at Automotive News.
Awesome. You want to get into your background as much as you want, especially with journalism, because a lot of this is just for me. I did this podcast so I can talk about the things I want to talk about when I can.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, your journalism background, man, is very interesting to me.
Good. You want me to start? I'll tell you.
Yeah, just get as much as you want to.
All right. So I was born into a newspaper family. My father worked at a newspaper for 45 years, rising from fetching coffee for reporters to walking out the door 45 years later as a publisher. So I spent a lot of time in newspaper offices hanging out with these weird characters, reporters and photographers. And so that was kind of my growing up. And my two older brothers went into journalism like I did. So it was a household of not a lot of great science and math being done, but we sure as hell could write and spell well.
Yeah.
So I majored in journalism at Michigan State. Did a couple internships in Rochester, New York, and Orange County, California, and got my first job in Dallas. I wouldn't say soon after graduating, but it was my older brothers and sisters. Like I graduated on Saturday and I went to work on Monday, but mine was a little bit longer.
Right.
Landed in Dallas and covered all sorts of things from crime and courts and fires and mayhem to Cowboys going to the Super Bowl, that kind of stuff, and then moved back to my hometown of Detroit and worked there for 8 years, same kind of stuff, just writing a variety of things. And then my wife was in newspapers too, and so we decided we needed to diversify a little bit. And so I went into kind of the higher ed sector and did communications at a university for a while. Now I'm back.
Talk about the newspaper game. Well, spot that for me, like Dallas. What time frame are we talking about?
So late 80s. I worked in Dallas from 1988 to 1995.
Okay. So newspapers still rocking then.
Yeah, we were. It was a great newspaper, and it was a little bit of a newspaper war still because there was a competing Dallas Times Herald for a while, but we kind of put them out of business maybe a couple of years after I arrived, and it was extreme growth for the Dallas Morning News at the time. We won a bunch of Pulitzers while it was there. We just kind of, spent a lot of money. I went to the first time the Cowboys went back to the Super Bowl. I was one of 32 people who went to the Super Bowl to cover it in some form or fashion, which is just kind of insane. And the resources that, and the money they spent. It was, we sold a bunch of advertisers, sold a bunch of newspapers because people love the Cowboys, but
Yeah.
it was an insane time. But it was great. It was a lot of fun.
I dabbled in newspaper writing in around 2005, just as it was dying, and it was on a local level, a smaller market. Obviously, not Dallas. I mean, not even Memphis. I'm in between Memphis and Nashville, but being able to put that press pass around your neck and get into all kinds of events for free was just the biggest kick for me, man. I just loved it.
You kind of, in many ways, you had again kind of a front row seat to a lot of history being made, even on the local level, on the national level, sometimes on the global level. It was, it was exciting. Every day was different. There was one day I walked in Dallas, and it was when the Murrah building bombing happened down in Oklahoma City, and they said, get on a plane and go to Michigan because there was a Michigan connection to it. I had like the clothes on my back, and that was all I had. And I went to the airport, and it was, much colder in Detroit. And so I called one of my sisters who lived along the freeway on the way to, what they call the thumb area of Michigan up, and I said, give me some clothes. So I met her on the side of the highway, and she, had sweatshirts and a coat and stuff, and drove up and, spent, 4 or 5 days in kind of the farmland around, Michigan, talking to people who lived near this person who was suspected of being involved in that bombing. So, always interesting.
Yeah, it was a fun gig, man. It was short lived for me. It was some weekly papers who came in and were trying to take down the big Gannett Daily here, and it did not work. But but the good news with that is the barrier to entry was nothing because I didn't go to school for journalism,
right?
But I was a reader and then therefore a writer. And I'm just, I love useless knowledge. I just like factoids and stuff like that. And I just fell right into it, man. And it's one of the best 6 months I've ever had working. And in fact, I try to emulate it now in audio.
Yeah. It's a different form of communication.
Yeah. So when things started going digital, were you nervous, because newspapers, it's kind of like rock and roll. They've been saying rock and roll is dead since probably the Beatles broke up.
Yeah.
Journalism's dead, and obviously 2024, man, it doesn't look anything like, because again, the barrier to entry, there's so many people who are in the media space who are like me and are rank amateurs. I mean, is journalism dead? Or, well, two-part question. Is journalism dead? 2, tell me about that transition for you. Did that make you nervous? Did it make you have to pivot or want to pivot?
No, I mean, when I left newspapers in 2004 to go work at the University of Michigan, it wasn't, it was just kind of more, my wife and I started having a family, and, newspapers, there's like, you don't come at 5 o'clock and close the door. I mean, there are things that happen. So you're on call really 24 hours a day. So it's a little bit, crazy. So we kind of said, well, let's at least one of us have a kind of a more simple kind of career where, that, 5 o'clock, I can shut the office door and go home. So, but I didn't think I'd ever get back in the newspaper business, but, Automotive News, a friend called and said they had an opportunity, not necessarily for me, but it's like, if you know anybody, and I was kind of like, well, that sounds kind of interesting to me. And so, where I work at Crane Communication, which owns, Automotive News, they've kind of found a good mix of, the journalism and also kind of that commercial space to remain, profitable. And, but it is, we have a pretty stout print subscriber base. It's declining, but not as rapidly as other, print publications, and so, but we've definitely shifted our focus into a more, a digital mindset. And I think, my always thinking was that I have I had a nephew who was, getting into the journalism business, not that long ago. And, and people say, oh, journalism is, dead or it's dying. But I always kind of thought, if you're able to write well, if you can communicate well, if you can take information and distill it into, some kind of readable, sensible, sentences and paragraphs, that there will be, a job market for you. People like those, a lot of people, I love to write. I couldn't, add or subtract or do anything like that, but I could write pretty well. And so there's people who hate writing, who can't write. And so there's always, I think, if you can write well, there'll be an opportunity for you to do something. But I think, we've kind of adapted, and it's, I write and I edit, and I do podcasts every once in a while, and I do video every once in a while. And so you kind of expand your portfolio a little bit, and it keeps you relevant and employed.
Yeah, I was going to say that automotive news seems to have found that sweet spot to where you're, like you said, you're blending, you're doing all the things. It's like a jack of all trades, and that's, I think, if a lot of newspaper, a lot of newspaper outlets tried to go digital, and they tried to do the things, but they did too little, too late. I mean, the Jackson Sun here, which is a Gannett paper, which is USA Today, that's an empty building, and now it's all done out of Memphis.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
We're big enough here that you can't really cover from an hour and a half down the road like you should, and it's sad in a sense, but had they done something similar to what I see on automotive news earlier, because you still want an authority. I think as many people that get into the game, there's a lot of noise, man, and you still have to differentiate yourself as being an authority and knowing what the hell you're talking about, to be honest.
Yeah. People. Yeah, I think there's an important role still to be played by journalism and journalists, that showing up at city council meetings, school board meetings, city commissioner meetings, just to keep people informed on what is happening. And if no one's watching, then who knows what's happening? And I think there's still a vital watchdog role to be played.
Yes. I know just from my stint, you have to kind of cover a lot of different things, especially like you said, to be relevant. Was getting into the automotive side, was that a hard stretch, or was it because most journalists are just inquisitive by nature anyway, the good ones.
Yeah.
So they pick up on it. Was that a learning curve, or did you fall into it?
No, it's the curve continues to this day. I'm always looking up, Googling stuff. What does that acronym stand for, and things like that.
I know.
But it's it's when I worked at newspapers, I wrote about everything. And you become an expert for a day, and that's just, you become the expert by asking questions, and and like you said, being curious. Explain that to me. And a lot of times I'm like, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, because I don't, and so, and so it's for automotive. I'm lucky, you get surrounded by some, good people, that are just, very friendly, want to be helpful. And so I will, every once in a while, I'll call somebody or text somebody, a service manager or service director I know, and say, I heard this, or can you explain this to me? We had something recently about how something was calculated, how some kind of profit calculate was done, and we weren't sure which way. So I texted a couple of dealer principals I know and said, when you calculate this, do you do it by this, or do you use this? And so unfortunately I got 2 different answers from them. So
yeah,
I'm not sure. So,
yeah.
But been able to go and attend meetings and go to conferences, and you learn, and you kind of you meet people and you listen to them, and so it just becomes easier. And so I wouldn't say that I'm an authority or an expert yet. I keep learning new stuff every day, but it's gotten a lot better.
Awesome. Yeah, I was in the automotive industry. I was in the parts, in the aftermarket for 13 years, and I swore I was never going to go back to, but I'm on the cool side of it now. When InteliChek and I met, it was, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this, but I get to talk about, I get to cover it like a journalist. I don't have to deliver parts in the sweltering West Tennessee heat, and that's a totally different ball
Oh
game,
yeah,
you know.
I've gone
Um,
soft.
yeah, well, I'm old, man. I mean, that's a young man's game. Um, okay, so how long? When did you start at Automotive News?
I started about 6 weeks before the pandemic.
Oh,
Yeah, so I started in kind of mid late January of 2020. Went to NADA out in Las Vegas and went to kind of a small gathering of some fix ops folks in Phoenix. And the whole world shut down while I was in Phoenix, and so did a couple things. Visited a Subaru dealership that I was going to write about, and then took the red eye home and set up shop on my kitchen table for the next year or so.
what does that look like now in 2024 with something that Automotive News is a big deal, man. I mean, and obviously it's compartmentalized, but is there an office you go to? Is it all remote? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I'm in the Crane headquarters right here in downtown Detroit. So I live about 15 minutes away, so it's a pretty quick drive for me. And so, um, they want everyone to come in a couple 3 times a week. Wednesdays are kind of the big day where we try and get everybody to come in. The editorial staff. We have, of my 4 reporters, 2 of them, one lives in Virginia, and a couple live, a couple hours away from Detroit, and so they don't come in very often, but maybe once a month or so they'll come in for the day. But it's, each day we have, some folks in, and they're someone who sits next to me never he came to the office every day, even through the pandemic. He said it's the safest place to be. There's nobody here.
Right. Yeah.
So we have a pretty decent sized newsroom. It's a lot of fun. I mean, newsrooms are kind of a little bit of they've calmed down a little bit, but they're fun. There's a lot of joking, a lot of yelling across the room and stuff like that. So it's great to be in here and amongst your colleagues, and then it's so much easier to like shout out a question to somebody. Hey, do you know somebody have a phone number for so and so? And so it's a lot better than a Zoom call or a Slack message.
That's what I was getting at. If there was still some semblance of a newsroom, because again, with my short stint, I'd show up every day too, man. It was the one gig that I had that I loved showing up to the office, because it was always changing. And I mean, it could get volatile, and it seems like for some reason, I was in there with a bunch of college graduates, and I'm a college dropout. And for some reason, I was the only one who could type in this room of brains, right? And I would always get stuck with transcribing everybody's stories, which, that sucked. But
you're probably old enough that you took typing class in like high school, right?
I did.
Like I did. I took a whole year. Yeah. I was like, I don't want to do this. My mother said, and this is before I even knew I was going to be like a journalist. She says, no, you need to know how to type. And so I took a whole year of typing, so.
Yeah, it's the only thing from high school that actually I use, I think. The rest of it, I was an awful student. Okay, so your job, Intel, you're an editor, but like just kind of walk through like this is kind of, I put this next, we could do both of these one shot. A day in the life, like, what's it look like?
So I oversee 4 reporters and who cover retail technology, F&I. I got 2 reporters who cover F&I, and someone who covers the used car wholesale auction kind of end of things. And then for service and parts, I have a kind of a group of freelancers who will send me stories. So typical morning, I'll like check in, I check in once a week with each reporter. What are you working on? What's coming up the next week? That kind of thing. And so then, I kind of know what to prepare for. And the morning, if I got stories, I'll edit some stories and move them along, to be edited by the copy desk and then put online. 10 a.m. we have a meeting every morning at 10 a.m. with all the editors. We get together. Okay, what's everybody got? What's going to go online today? And we try and put up 15 or stories or so on the website every day, And so we'll talk about that. Then we'll have another meeting twice a week where we'll talk about the print issue. Okay, what's going in the print? What's the possible page 1 story? What's going to be on page 3, page 4? And then so we'll repeat that every day throughout the week. I'll talk with with my reporters. How I heard about this. I'm thinking about writing something about that. I said, okay, sounds good. When you're going to send it to me, this kind of thing. So it's a constant, every day I'm, getting stories in from my reporters, editing them, moving them along. I help publish an F&I newsletter every Wednesday, service and parts newsletter every Thursday, which as we record this Thursday, I have to write a couple items up. The newsletter's going to be a little bit late. And so I'll write a couple things as well, and we'll move that newsletter, send it out a little bit later this afternoon. So just daily, getting stories in, talking with reporters, sending stories back. I got a question about this, and so it's a kind of little back and forth, and then move them along, put them up on the website, things like that.
So it's basically just like the old days then. I mean, they're hard deadlines. If 15 stories a day, that's a lot, man.
Yeah.
And so it's constantly moving then, right? I mean, that's just.
So, on an average day, I might, move. It could be anywhere from 1 to, 4 or 5 stories. Like next week, we have an F&I special section. We have them once a quarter. And so that'll be, 10, 11, 12 pages of copy. And so I'll have, a dozen, 14 stories that I'll have to move, starting probably tomorrow and then into early next week. So it'll be a big onslaught of copy. So it'll be busy. It'll be a busy week next week.
Perception is not always reality.
And, there's this perception that the dealerships are more expensive for everything. And InteliChek kind of confirms that that's not the case.
InteliChek helps dealerships become aware of where their prices stand in regard to their competitors.
And InteliChek does a good job of giving us that pricing data to confirm that we're in the market.
And this allows dealerships to make their customers aware of their competitive pricing.
I placed 2 placards in the business center so they could see that while they're over there working on computers. I also placed it in our coffee area. We have a glass wall there, so when they walk in, as they're putting their creamer and sugar in their coffee, they're going to look up and see the pricing for our pricing as well as our competitors.
Introducing InteliShare. InteliShare contains all of InteliChek's promotional tools that you can use to promote your favorable prices, including InteliAds, the printable flyers that you can show off in easel displays, InteliMedia for your digital media boards, and InteliWidgets, so you can show off price comparisons on your website and even let your customers schedule from the widget.
Just having access to that data that they're able to provide gives us a good plan of how we're going to proceed.
Call 877-827-7273 or go to InteliChek.com to find out more about how the InteliShare series can help you grow your business. You mentioned your writers bringing you ideas. Are they pretty autonomous? Are they pretty proactive, and or do you have to stay on people to get the deadlines?
No, they're very good, and they have to be because I can't be looking and feeding them stuff. It's it's on them, and they're great. They have their own set of sources. They're reading stuff. They're on Facebook groups of whether it be F&I managers, things like that. And we get pitches from PR people, press releases about different things going on in the industry, and so maybe we might turn a story out of a recent study or a survey, things like that. And so they'll say, "Oh, I got this email today about this new survey about how many people are late paying their car payments or whatever," and that could be a good story. Oh yeah, that sounds good. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. What elements to include, who we should talk to, if we should have a chart that goes with it, things like that. For the service and parts, it's a little bit because I have all freelancers. And so a lot of that is me giving story ideas to them. I had a freelancer from the Miami area called yesterday, and I said, okay, I got a story for you. He's been bugging me. You got anything for me? So I said, okay, I found a story for you, and I was told him what it was about. Here's the person to call. Here's kind of what I'm looking for from the story. Here's what I think the question what I'm curious to learn about it. And then they'll go out, write it, send it back to me. So for service and parts, I'm a little bit more actively handing out story ideas. I love the freelancers who come to me and say, I've got an idea for a story. And then it just makes my life easier.
Yeah. Well, if you ever need a field reporter for the Blue Oval City, I'm 45 minutes away from there, and I've gotten in that place once.
Okay.
I've been trying to rub elbows with Ford, but I don't know about the CV thing, man. It seems like just in general everything's on shaky ground, and I don't know. Ford, they let information slip out when they want it to be slipped out. So I don't know if I would be the news hound quite, but I am in the vicinity. So if you ever need a Blue Oval City guy, man,
that's good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. What type of stories excite you the most?
I like the ones that are kind of the best practices type things. They're the innovative, creative things that people are doing. The one I mentioned about the writer in Miami is about a dealership that is going to they're going to buy tools for all their techs, where a lot of technicians have to come in with their own toolbox. And then there's been a lot of programs where graduating techs might get a starter kit, that kind of thing. But this dealership said, we think this is a good recruitment tool. This is a good retention tool. You don't have to buy it. When you show up day one, there's going to be a whole full set of tools that are yours to put in your bay. And, so that's a kind of an interesting story. It's a new, someone trying to do something different to improve their recruitment and their retention of employees. So those kind of stories that show innovative, creative people at work, are the ones that really I think I like, and I think readers like.
Yeah, I like that as well, because and everybody in the industry will tell you this. This is an industry that's slow to change, man. A lot of people are stuck in their ways, and it's the way it's like going back to the old newspaper days. Well, this is the way we've always done it.
Right.
Well, since COVID, man, you can't afford to do that. And of course you've seen this push on the fixed side now, because it's what's holding, or at least it was what was holding dealerships together.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
they didn't have anything to sell, So I love that as well. I interviewed Arnold Gassita yesterday with Petra, and that Petra Cares program.
Right. That's a great story. Yeah.
And, when he gets to talking about it, I'm thinking, okay, you killed two birds, one stone. You're combating the tech shortage issue and the foster kids, giving them something. But then he goes down the line and talks about how, the prison, the prison population he's like, the foster care system is tied up in all this stuff. And so he was talking about how eventually, he's wanting to decrease prison population by his program. And I'm just sitting there going, man, that's so cool. I didn't even think of that, but
I mean, I met Arnold a year or so ago at an event in San Antonio, and he kind of told me about this. We had, a little cocktail hour, and I was like, okay, we're gonna write about this. This is a great story, and we did. I wrote something recently about they're expanding it out into LA, which I'm sure he told you about.
Yeah,
but I mean, and this, it's a great organization and a great program, and it's not self-serving for him. He doesn't own a dealership. He doesn't need technicians, but he saw a need and he wanted to help. And he's just a big-hearted person. He's a great human being. So, that was a great story.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the kinds of things. And then on the less maybe on the heart side, but just like you said, the innovation, like mobile repair and stuff like that. People, Ed Roberts down at Beaux-Arts, man, it's just which I know Ford's, as an OE is really pushing the mobile repair and pickup and delivery, but he took it and ran with it,
Oh yeah.
Stuff like that, man, is just cool to see. And of course I'm fascinated with the autonomous vehicles and EVs, just because, there's so much hype around it. And again, with me being right down the road, and, if you played that out, if you believed the hype early on, and it's like, well, this is all there's going to be, well, that would really disrupt a lot of things. as far as technicians and everything else, So that kind of stuff really floats my boat, as they say.
I was in Phoenix recently for a conference, and I rode in a Waymo, driverless, shuttle to and from the conference. Like it was really cool. First time it was a little unnerving to sit in the back seat and watch this car making turns and going into traffic and stuff. But it was great, cheaper than an Uber, and you didn't have to tip a driver, and got to set your own music, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah. See, I one of my many in between career things, I had to rely on being an Uber driver just to eat, and when this thing happens, nobody's going to want to sit in the car with me when they can just sit in the car by themselves and, you said, play with the radio. I mean, 2024. What are the hot topics or things we should look for, trends, anything that's got you excited about 2024 or frightened for that matter?
Well, I think, there's the old standbys of getting enough technicians. If you don't have enough technicians, you're losing money every day. And then, how do you find them? How do you keep them? I think, those are just, those have been issues for years, and I think they'll continue to be for a while. I think, you mentioned Ed Roberts and the mobile service. I think finding ways to better engage customers, how they want to be, dealt with, whether, again, that goes from like texting and video MPIs to potentially mobile service of people like that. I mean, I think service departments still struggle in certain places with wait times. I can't get you in till, in 2 weeks or something like that, and as Ed made the point to me, or I'll send a van out to your house tomorrow or to your office building. We'll diagnose it. If we need parts, we'll order them, and then we'll come back out the next day and we'll fix it for you. Or do you want to wait 2 weeks to get into the shop? So I think, finding ways to, better retain customers, keep them loyal with great customer service is, just kind of one of those age-old things that dealership service departments are dealing with.
This may be out of your department as far as what you have to cover, and it's fine. We can cut this out. But talking about the customer relationship, I'm working on something that we're going to record at the end of May, and actually Ed Roberts is going to be on the call. But are you familiar with the Right to Repair Act?
Oh yeah,
And I just as a dude, as a freedom loving dude, I don't even know where I fall on that, because if I'm an entrepreneur, right, and I come up with a better mousetrap, I don't want somebody telling me that I have to give my proprietary software away. But at the same time, as an owner of a vehicle,
as a consumer,
I want the option to I don't want to have to just go to one place. I do not know where I stand on this. But I think that one, and I know enough about it to be dangerous. I'm going to have some experts on to help me with that, but that kind of goes to that whole thing to where, the idea is that, well, we don't want dealerships having a monopoly. Well, the stats, depending on what you look at, say that 70% of the service work goes after warranty expiry goes to the. So who has the monopoly? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's anyway. You don't have to comment on that. That's just one of the things I'm thinking about.
I did a story with there's a firm here in Michigan, Detroit area called Ducker Carlisle, and they do a lot of benchmarks surveys. They work with a lot of OEMs on technician benchmark surveys, service advisors surveys, do a lot of great, really informative work. And I interviewed a guy, and they looked into the right to repair, and the OEMs were pumping millions and tens of millions of dollars into like fighting this. And this researcher was like, don't even bother. If people will, if you're a good deal and you're a fair price and you treat them well, they're going to come to you. Whether or not who has all the data shared, it doesn't matter. If you treat customers well, just stop spending the millions of dollars and just do work on your customer service, and it won't matter. And he said it's kind of, you're just kind of wasting money, and kind of throwing it at the wrong thing. So
yeah, that's another point. Dan, we should probably get you on this.
we should get
episode.
to Dr. Carlisle. I can get you if you want. I'll send you his contact information, or I'll send you this link to the story. It's okay. It's pretty interesting.
Okay, cool. Well, we kind of blew through that. Is there anything that you want to talk about that I didn't ask you?
No, I mean you got it pretty covered.
Let me ask you this: does you talked about threading that needle? Automotive News does a really good job with keeping up with the times. Is there talks of, like, I'm sure there is, more multimedia type to even change from the typical? I mean, I hope we don't get to a point, man, where people don't even want to read an article, but it's looking like people would just rather have somebody talk it on a video, than read.
Well, I think our approach has evolved. We've got some new leadership in the past, I don't know if it's been a year and a half or so, or 2 years. And it is, looking at digital, it's about podcasting, it's about videos, getting the reporters and editors out, on video with their expertise, talking about the UAW negotiations, or, Stellantis's latest earnings, what they mean, Tesla, so I think there's value, and like we see value in our expertise and our people to, and so, so it's, multi-platform. It's writing for our website. It could be on, our Daily Drive podcast. It can be on our videos and social media. And then all this stuff gets pushed out to social media as well. So I think it's not that traditional of, let's write a story and then we're going to wait 6 days and it'll be you can read about it in the paper. It's up, and it's up online. You can read it right away. We'll send you an email. We're going to blast things, but also you can hear the reporter or the subject of the story being interviewed on Daily Drive. You can watch videos. You can go to our, Instagram, TikTok, and you can, see, again, our expertise on display through all those multiple platforms.
Yeah. Like I said, you guys do a great job with that. And I used to want to have a publication back before newspapers died completely. And if I were doing that, that's what I would do. I'd have something for everyone, because you have to, Yeah,
there's still people who wait for that, Monday for the Automotive News to land in their dealership or at home and page through it. I mean, I still like to read and hold something and read it, and but there are others who want to read it on their phone or their tablet or on their laptop at work.
Yeah,
trying to give it everybody.
I still buy vinyl records, man, on a record player. That's not the most convenient way to listen to music, but it's the best way. I mean, but I also have MP3s and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing that I thought about when you said you covered the used car, like with auctions and stuff, are the prices coming down? The supply chain in general, is that just driving around here? Either it's some great staging with some used vehicles, but the dealerships seem, on the new side, the lots seem to be filling up again. What's going on in used?
Yeah, so I think new vehicle inventory is improving. So I think that is making. Before there was not a lot of new vehicles used, so that pushed people into the used market. Used prices went up. There's more of inventory now, but I think interest rates are still kind of keeping a lot of people on the sidelines, so they're not buying. But yeah, used was through the roof not that long ago, and it's kind of now, I would say, normalized or even a little bit below normal. So they kind of flattened out. There was a little bit of a bump when people got their tax returns and used that to go buy a car, whether new or used. So I've got 2 college kids home who need, transportation to their jobs. And so I'm in the used market myself. And so, hopefully prices will stay down a little bit for a while. And, but I think they've kind of steadied, and back to kind of more normal levels.
Cool. Dan, that's all I can think of, man.
All right.
Unless you want to just riff on some stuff, you know. You got to get that story out, though, right?
Yes,
You got to get that.
yeah, I got work to do, but no,
Okay.
no. I think we did. I think we covered. It's got something usable for you.
Yeah, and thanks for the shout out, man.
Of course, yeah.
Overheard, yeah, that's cool. Now I'm trying to produce episodes. I'm thinking, what would Dan shine like? Will you put your own in there?
No.
That would be too meta, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That's too, a little too self-serving.
I do have for this newsletter. So I do one daily drive and interview per week on Fridays, and it's usually an F&I topic or a fixed ops topic. And so I interviewed a service trainer for this week, and so I'll include it. Or last Friday, so I included it in this Thursday's newsletter. So. And I guess that's some way of getting my voice in there a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, Dan, I'm gonna stop this.
All right.